5G towers, your cell phone, laptops. Look, I think we all know that we are being bombarded with this negative energy, negative frequency. And I don't know about you, but I pick up my cell phone and my hand feels different. So there's something definitely going on here. And today we have the founder of, or the CEO of Airestech, Josh. How do I say your last name?
Bruni.
Bruni, welcome. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
So just in me saying that, you were already nodding. So tell me, what's happening in the world when it comes to frequency, energy? Because I think this is a very big topic for people.
Yeah, I mean, it's a loaded question, obviously. The scientific community is not going to give you a direct answer or guide you in a specific way. I think if you pay attention to, I would say, some of the subheadlines, I think the answers are there for you. I think it's definitely a topic that's being talked about at a level in the public sphere from quote unquote trusted voices, more so than ever has been. Andrew Huberman is probably the most notable person in recent year to talk about it, and specifically saying conclusively the data that my team aggregated together of all the studies, everything that's been done, do not put the cell phone in your pocket, right? Like there's some people out there that have talked about that. And I would recommend people go, dig around and see what you can come up with and see, what story do you want to subscribe to? Tim Ferriss talked about it 15 years ago in the 4 Hour Body. And there's also a lot of court cases that nobody talks about. RFK is notorious for leading an organization that has really, I would say, being at the kind of the bleeding edge of trying to change the regulations around how much radiation is acceptable. And there's a recent court case within the last few years that he won against the FCC. I say his group won against the FCC and the FTC, and I believe the FDA as well, because they were using each different organization to say one was okay, and they're kind of, saying, well, the FDA says it's okay, so therefore it's okay. And then the FTC says it's okay to sell this because the FCC says it. So it was just, they were just kind of going around and around and helping each other get these things through. And so that was at the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court said, no, you're ignoring all the scientific evidence that suggests this is harmful. Go back and please give us a real clear picture. And nobody knows that actually existed or that ever happened. So I think that kind of stuff is really interesting. So I say, when you dig into it, you don't have to dig too far. I think what happens is you start to, if you don't stick to, I would say, somewhat trusted sources, you're going to find yourself in these pockets and pools of people that I would say are over exaggerating or conspiracy theory side. You quickly can take a wrong turn and go that way too, right? And so we tend to stay fact-based, science-based. Science is always evolving. It's changing constantly. And so we always are looking for the latest, greatest. What do we know today? And how is that evolving? And all signs point to there's definitely cause for concern.
So when you say there's cause for concern and you use words like, facts-based and science-based, what are the facts showing us about radiation, EMF, and 5G?
That's a good question. One thing that I will add is, as Airestech, that's our website, the company's American Aries, and American Aries is a publicly traded company. And so what I can say is very different than what others can say. It's kind of like the supplement industry, right? Like, this health supplements can kind of say whatever they want to say. It's not regulated in any real way. And if there's, years ago, having marketed lots of supplements, you would see like green coffee extract was on Dr. Oz. And then you would see a marketer then create a green coffee extract supplement that says as seen on Dr. Oz, and no idea what's in it. Dr. Oz is not endorsing it, but this idea of this confusion within the marketplace, I can't do that as a publicly traded company. Like, I'm heavily regulated in what I can and cannot say. Whereas people that are selling you EMF protection stickers or devices that have some sort of mystical power, like, I can't do that stuff. And I would say that most of those don't work, but I actually don't know. And I don't really care to dig into their science.
So what can you say?
What I can say is there are over 25,000 studies that have been submitted to the World Health Organization, really in the last few years. This isn't just like over ever. This is in the last few years. And the World Health Organization has classified EMF as a carcinogen. So that is all known, right? And they have said how many studies, well over 25,000 studies have been submitted. And you can go, what's really great about AI these days is you can go on to, a site like Consensus, and you can aggregate all those studies, and it can spit out a response as, hey, based upon these studies, here's a value score on the sentiment, or is this right? Is this not right? It'll tell you that. And so you can go there now and it will aggregate all of the peer-reviewed research on EMF and EMF safety and harm and whatnot. And it will tell you that it's harmful. It will tell you that the studies suggest that it is harmful. And I think that's really fascinating because never before can any one human go through all that, or nor will anybody do that. And now you can have a robot do that in a matter of seconds, spit out this conclusive idea that this is harmful. So what I can say is I can lean on the science and say, okay, this paper suggests this. Andrew Huberman said this. RFK Jr. said this. Like, I can say that kind of stuff. Where we go as a company, though, is we talk a lot about just the idea of energy, and the body is energy. The body is electric. And so we talk a lot about, everyone goes to EMF protection because we're from this fear of cell phone and radiation and stuff like that. And there is cause for concern, but when you understand the physics behind how our product works and this idea that does neutralize the harmful radiation, there is also a stimulating effect because our product does amplify beneficial frequencies as well. And so we can talk a little bit more about that. But the last thing I'll say is onto your question on what can I say is, I would recommend, like I said, do your own research. The one thing that as a company we do advocate is really trying to teach people how to read science and how to understand science. And then from my point of view, as a lifetime marketer of doing this for multiple decades, is marketing is powerful. Good marketing is extremely powerful to get you to perform a function or behavior or shift behavior in a way that you'd never anticipated. And I think that so many people in our space, specifically EMF protection, prey on fear, flood the internet and socials and all that kind of stuff with information that creates a crazy amount of fear. And should you be concerned? Absolutely. Is it as big of a problem as some people would have you believe? We don't actually know. That's the actual real answer is we don't actually know, but we are living out the science experiment. So do you want to participate in that science experiment knowing that there is risk? Or do you want to take an insurance policy and say, I'm going to buy this, $80 product or whatever it is and neutralize any possible negative side effect?
So some thoughts. I'll say what I can say.
Yeah.
And, I am very candid in my approach. I share absolutely everything. This all started for me years ago, where I would literally pick up a phone and I would feel this energy in my hand and in my arm, or I would put it in my back pocket and like my right butt cheek would feel a little bit different than my left. And I just started to really, really pay attention. And I started getting, from a spiritual perspective, downloads that this stuff is just absolutely terrible for you because, quite frankly, we are energy, and this is energy that the human body is just not used to. So some of the things that I started doing, number one, and I'll show you, but I have an Airestech not only on my cell phone, but I have it on every single laptop. We have it on the AirPod Maxes. And those I don't even really like using. Every single kid that I have ever given birth to or, fathered has one. My fiance has one. I just don't play around with it because as a man in particular, like, we are the protectors. And I feel like this is something that is happening in society today that we have to wake up to, That's number one. That's the protection side. The second part, I'm a little jealous because you have one around your neck.
Yeah.
But I have bought 2 of them and I lost 2 of them. And they're so valuable to me. So if you can show it, it's the little square one.
Yeah.
And this one here, guys, I love, which I'm going to get myself another one because one day, I kid you not, I was just getting done with my event Awaken. And picture 800 people all doing breath work, all like releasing some of their trauma. Combine that with the fact that in human design, I'm a reflector. That means that I am an open channel. So I absorb and feel and reflect back everyone's energy. My energy was just all out of whack. And I remember our conversation where you said, this is more than EMF protection. This helps with your energy. So you know what I did? I literally grabbed mine and I put it right here in the middle of my chest and I just laid down. And I kid you not, 20 minutes later, I was feeling way better.
Yeah.
And I thought to myself, oh my God, this thing is for real.
Yeah.
I don't need the scientific studies. I know there's an issue and I know that that thing works.
Yeah.
You know? So explain to me, how does it help with energy, and where did the founder, like, where did he come up with this?
And so your experience, by the way, is not unique. In a couple of things. You mentioned the phone and the physical response, the physical sensation you felt just from having the phone. The way that people typically find this is through an experience like that. AirPods is a really popular one. And if you talk to, the neuroscientists or people that are looking at the brain all the time, they're telling you that those ear holes are a direct line to your brain with nothing in between. Everywhere else, you have skull, you have a way to protect, but you're literally putting this electrical current through your brain. Now, it is a different, wavelength and whatnot than, let's say, 5G and your Wi-Fi and whatnot, but it's still a current nonetheless. And the other one we hear is the Apple Watch. The Apple Watch is one, and we don't like to demonize electronics because we're all guilty of using it.
Stop right there. I will do it. I'm telling you this right now. I put on that new Apple Watch, the big one, and it literally started burning my wrist.
Yeah.
And I thought to myself, there is no way on God's green earth that I am wearing that damn watch.
Yeah.
It's cool. It does everything, but I felt it. And
yeah.
I feel like the more attuned you are to energy, the more that you feel these things.
Yeah.
We get bombarded by 5G and EMF 24/7, and it's clear by now how terrible it is for our health and our energy. As a parent, it's important to me to be able to protect not only myself, but my family, my kids. And quite frankly, there's only one product that I trust to do that, and that's Airestech. As the only patented peer-reviewed EMF protection solution, they're at the forefront of making my world and yours a whole lot safer. For over 20 years, Airestech has invested in cutting-edge research to create a product that is trusted by experts, neuroscientists, doctors, and even professional athletes. I use their technology to shield not only myself, but Jen and of course my kids from all electromagnetic radiation, which enhances not only our mental clarity, but our overall well-being. Every single device that we or my children own has an Airestech on it. It's not just about protection. It's about living your life to the fullest without worrying about the invisible risks of modern technology. Whether we're working from home, we're hitting the gym, or just relaxing with family, Airestech gives us the peace of mind that we need in today's world. See the difference for yourself. Join me and thousands of others who've already taken their step towards a healthier life with Airestech. Visit airestech.com and use the code DANNY25 to get 25% off at checkout.
You also then mentioned you were able to feel the change. And I would liken that to people that understand grounding. Like, you can ask a lot of people to go outside, take their shoes off, and will they experience a physical change? They will at a physiological level. Will they at a conscious level? Not everybody will, right? But yet we know through scientific evidence and that there is an absolute physiological shift in the body's electricity when you ground. Okay. So it's the same thing with, I would say, with our product. There's a large percentage of the population that will have an immediate effect of like, I feel more connected, I feel more grounded, because what is happening is your body has multiple energy fields. Your brain, your heart are really powerful ones, but they're not in sync. It's not one field. It's lots and lots of different fields. Each cell has a field. It's just a bunch of energy. And I always think of it as like traction control in a car, where like if you're driving, You have no idea if your left front tire got traction and your rear one lost traction. You have no idea because the computer is moving power and shifting it around, and you're just going. Everything's fine. Your body's doing the same thing. You don't actually know what's off, what's not off, because your body is constantly adjusting. And so this dynamic fields, they're constantly being adjusted and recalibrated based upon the demands of the body. And so what happens is when people that are experiencing, let's say you were talking about, you're kind of in disarray for a minute and you put that on, there's a balancing that does occur. You could go out into the desert with no 5G, no wireless radiation whatsoever, and you would still experience a benefit from it. And that's because it's extremely sensitive. That's why these bigger ones are more powerful.
I was just thinking, I want that one.
Yeah. This is, if I was to recommend, first of all, the one on your cell phone, I think is a no-brainer. I believe everyone should have that. And we'll talk about how it works. And the second, I would say, if you really want the biggest benefit, this one, because of the surface area of the resonator, and the proximity, if you're wearing it in this way to the heart, which is a very powerful field, you're going to get a lot of value out of that. Whether you're healthy, unhealthy, it doesn't matter. You're going to get a lot of value out of that.
I'd like to speak to that just because sometimes, again, because of energy, like I'm very sensitive to it. And sometimes my heart is just like, it's just like doing its own thing. And I have to focus, meditate, put my hand over it, tell it to like literally calm down, and it does. But it's so true.
Yeah.
The heart, it's its own little brain, its own little organ, and the way that you think, the way that you feel, the emotions you're going through, the stress that you're feeling, all of it has an impact on not just the heart, but on every single organ. And that's why I think it's so important for all of you to have one of these. I genuinely believe that. When we talked, I actually had my team reach out to you guys.
I
was
remember.
like, I believe in this thing, and I think the world has to have it. Call them because I want to get them on the podcast.
Yeah. Like I said, it's most of our partnerships have happened that way, organically, where like Macy Barber, the UFC fighter, she reached out to us and was like, something's happening and I want to understand why. Can I work with you guys? How do I understand this in a deeper way? And she's been a fantastic partner. But we have many others. John Tavares, who's the captain of the Toronto Maple Leafs, same thing. We did this partnership with Macy. His team contacted us and said, hey, John's been a customer for 4 years. Why didn't you call John? We're like, we had no idea, But the point is people, and the reason why athletes, I think, gravitate towards us, they're high performance machines. So they understand the inputs extremely well. They're very sensitive to that. The same way that I would say sick people are, they also understand the inputs. They understand if they're exposed to mold. They understand if they're exposed to EMF, for example. Electrohypersensitivity is a real thing. And people that have experienced some neurological dysfunction or disorder, Lyme disease is a really popular one, they experience electrohypersensitivity. And so when you have a cell phone on or near them, then they know they're super sensitive. And I think athletes are the same way. We've learned that because we had so many of them. It's been overwhelming, the number of elite athletes. I'm not talking like the fourth string lineman on some team you never heard of. I'm talking about the best on the planet are customers of ours. And we will continue to announce more and more names that we partnered with because they've come to us and said, hey, something's happening and I'm feeling it and I want to understand more. And so going back to what you're saying about the energy, I think it is important to understand that my personality, for example, I'm very science and math. I'm not creative. I have always struggled a little bit with religion and spirituality because I'm so
when I mentioned ayahuasca, you just like not
to me, there's science behind that because there's
you could see
there's physiological changes within the body that occur. So I'm probably more open to that than I am, let's say, with just general religion. Let me just say that.
Oh yeah.
So when Aries first approached me, I was skeptical, like everybody else should be, right? When you take the time and you dig into how Aries works, it's actually extremely simple and it's completely transparent. If you wanted to go recreate this on your own, it's all on the website. The patents are there. All the research is there. The mathematical equations to tell you the shape to make the grooves with the etchings within the silicon resonator, it's all there.
The story. Tell me the story. The founder was like from Russia or
yeah. So the founder, the origin of this. Well, let me finish that thought because I want to get back to it. Why we'll get back to the founder story. The reason why I now gravitated towards Aries was because there wasn't any sort of mysticism to it. There was no, like, you're not asking me to make a leap of faith on, okay, here's a crystal and it may or may not work. I'm not saying crystals are bad, but I'm like, there's not a lot of science that supports this. It's, you know what I'm saying, right? And then there's a lot of other products in this category that are completely like black box. There's like magic water in this one that does something. There's a energy that's been transferred into this metal box. That's another thing. And there's another chip that's like ours, but they don't tell you how it works, or it just all these weird things. So I struggle with that a lot. You know, having spent a lot of time in the marketing world with supplements and all these other things, I'm like, okay, I know how to tell a good story and I know how to get people to buy something. And what they're doing is exactly that. So I was skeptical with Aries. When you dig into it though, and you understand there are very basic principles of diffraction, superposition, coherence, all those things are well known, well understood, and used all around us. And what Aries did was they took these specific scientific principles, organized them in a way to create this specific outcome. Your cell phone uses very similar principles to process the signal that we use. But what we're doing is we want to create an interference pattern. So we use the energy from the EMF that's around us, the like 5G, for example, that then basically think of it as like a crystal where you shine a light at it, and what happens? The light diffracts and goes all over, right? It scatters. So what this chip does, why the etchings matter, is there's a fractal pattern on there, and fractals are the similar repeating pattern, and there's millions of them. And so it covers this really broad range of frequencies. And what happens is you push this energy, this 5G energy, it interacts with this. It creates a new field that's stable and controlled because we can tune it based upon the geometry of these etchings. That then field, which is a 3-dimensional holographic field, then interacts with the incoming radiation, and then through interference, which is again well understood scientific principle, it either neutralizes it because of destructive interference, or amplifies it, which is constructive interference, which means they're in phase, and now you're like how two waves in the water combine and the wave gets bigger, or if they're not in phase, they collide and they go away. That's the same, is exactly the same thing. Wave science is wave science. Doesn't matter if it's sound waves, light waves, or water waves. It's the same. They interact in a very similar way. And so that's how it works at a very super basic level. It blows people's minds though, because we don't understand some of those things, but it actually is very fundamental to physics. Like the stuff that I'm talking about, there's no mysticism whatsoever. Like, so going back to the founder, unless you wanted to ask a question about any of that.
Yeah.
Going back to the founder. So this, like I said, spans kind of decades of work. And as technology has advanced, the smaller this has gotten. So the more grooves, the more etchings, the product has been built with. And so, because also the amount of EMF that's being created has gone up exponentially and is only going up exponentially. You think about your fridge, your vacuum, like literally everything's connected, right? And so you're just saturated with this electro smog that's all around us. And you don't really think about it because you don't see it. And when you think about environmental stressors, EMF is high on the list because of the disruptive nature of it. It's disruptive in the way that your body communicates with itself. And so that's only increased. So then you go back to decades ago when the founder, Dimitri's the founder of Aries in its current form. His father is the original engineer and inventor of the technology. And then Dimitri then commercialized it in this consumer application. But this is like I'm going to get my history wrong, but whenever USSR broke apart and then you ended up with Russia and the other 15 or so countries, this predates that. And so a lot of our science comes from Eastern Germany, which at one point was part of USSR. And now there's Lithuania and there's, Ukraine and all these other countries. A lot of our science and research and team, they're all in those countries, that Eastern bloc of Europe. And so he worked with them. He himself is not, let's say, a doctor, right? He himself is more of an engineer. And in that part of the world, electronics, EMF, all these things are actually part of what you're taught in school. And so when you look at their, like the Soviet Union in particular, and you go back in time, you think about the space race, you think about so much of the innovation of technology in that period of time came from the Soviet Union. And actually, RFK Jr. mentioned this on the Joe Rogan podcast when he talked about EMF specifically. The Russians and Soviet Union are so far ahead on their understanding of EMF, how to use EMF and how to do all these things. They're so far ahead. Most of the research comes from there. Another case in point, I was looking at the citation in some of our literature just today, and we had cited this research paper from NASA, where NASA was using an almost identical strategy in the earliest space shuttle to modulate electromagnetic radiation, because in space, there's electromagnetic interference. So it would disrupt their electronics. So go back to like the 60s, and they were using diffraction, the exact same way they were using it, to basically scatter this interference from electromagnetic radiation. And they cited in their research the Russians, which I thought was really fascinating. I'm like, okay, because that validates a lot of what I experience on a day-to-day basis. Is so much of this research, you always ends up back in St. Petersburg or somewhere in Russia. And so long story short, a lot of the technology was originally designed for military application and used to keep, what happened was these operators in these remote missile operating stations, you think of like a metal trailer with satellites all over it and computers inside, the operators were getting really sick and or they're getting lethargic. They were having issues. And so through some tests and whatever they did, they identified that it was EMF. And think about it, they're in a metal box and there was so much of it. They're just being saturated. So Dimitri's father was charged with, we understand, you have this technology that can modulate these frequencies and basically neutralize the negative effects. So come up with a solution. And that was where the original concept 2 decades ago came from, maybe 3 decades ago now, came from. And then over time had been iterated on and then applied to bees, animals, agriculture. All of it's disrupted through EMF. And so over time, we made our way to this consumer version where we have today, and we work a lot with, humans.
And you have the square one is, or whatever the shape is.
Yeah, this one's square. Yeah. So the different versions. The different versions basically they're more sensitive, so they can be further away from the source of energy and broadcast a larger protection area.
So how big is that protection area for that one?
If you look at the literature, it's always in like the worst case scenario. And one thing that a lot of people don't even realize is we're not even close to using the amount of energy that 5G could utilize. There was this promise of 5G several years ago, if you recall, where it was like, we're gonna have real time, information. I can bet in real time on, is this, when the play starts in football, I can bet in real time. Hasn't happened yet, right? 5G actually, my opinion, sucks. Like, I never even use it because it just wears my battery out and it doesn't ever work. So I never even use it. The point is there's a lot of bandwidth yet that we could experience with 5G that we haven't even touched yet.
Gotcha.
And so when we modeled this, we actually modeled at the upper range of 5G. And then last year we brought it down and said, consumers don't even use that amount of 5G. So to answer your question, I still would say, even though there's a protective range of, let's say, 15 to 20 feet, I would still say with most of these products, I think of a personal area or a room, let's say a basic room, let's say 15 by 15, right?
So this thing that I have on my phone right now, it's not only like this thing is 15 by 15.
That one I would keep within your person, like within this space. It's smaller. And you can see it's just smaller in general. So the amount of fractals that are in there, there aren't as many. And so it's not going to broadcast as big of a range of space. And so, but it is really close to the source. And so it doesn't need to be big.
Gotcha.
And that's why, is because it's so close to the source.
So I have one of these for every one of our family's cell phones, and that's...
Yeah, virtually 100% of every one of our customers has that product, and usually multiples, because they're putting it on their iPad. I have it on everything. Basically everything. And then I would say, like at your workstation or in your car, I would use some of the bigger ones. We have one that's probably 30% larger than this, that has 2 processors on it, two resonators on it. And then we have one that has 3 on it that's even larger. I tend to travel with the larger ones, especially if I'm on an airplane. And you know this, if you travel and you get off the plane, you want to ground almost immediately to discharge that. Planes are notorious for large amounts of EMF. They're actually radiation workers. Most people don't even know that people that work in that industry are considered radiation workers. They can only be exposed on the plane for so long. And so that's just something that a lot of people don't realize, but gives you an idea of how much radiation is actually on the plane.
Yeah.
So I travel with typically a larger one, or, the funny thing has happened that I've noticed, I travel a lot, is if I'm sitting next to somebody, I almost always have, and I don't talk a lot. Like I get down there, I zone out, like I want to sleep or I want to work or I just want to do nothing. Right. It's kind of like quiet time.
Yeah.
And I just say the internet may or may not work on every one of my flights because I don't want to be connected. I'm like, this is my time to shut it down. And so I'm never interacting with people next to me. But the number of people as I'm getting off the flight are saying, you had a really calm feeling when you sat down and I enjoyed sitting by you. And I didn't interact with them whatsoever. I've never had that happen to me before, but I would say it happens 1 out of 3 flights I have now where it's like, it's crazy at how many people are like, you have a really calming feeling. And I'm like, I didn't even look at you. As a matter of fact, I was annoyed when you asked me to get up so you go to the bathroom. So that happens all the time. It's the energy. Yeah. They feel that shift.
You guys just recently made a deal with the UFC.
Yeah. So a couple new partnerships. Again, we like to use athletics. We like to look at people in the most extreme conditions. And again, athletes kind of organically came to us. And as we started to do, look into it, it made a lot of sense, right? They're under a lot of stress. They have extreme training, and they need to be like wired for bursts of time all the time, right? And so when we looked at like, what organizations, make sense, we'd already had kind of a decent batch of UFC fighters that had started working with us, and a lot of them kind of poking around. And that had to do a lot with, I think, our relationship with Ben Greenfield, who's always really been a big advocate for EMF kind of awareness for a long, long time. But he also has had a lot of influence on UFC fighters. And so if I was to connect the dots backwards, I think a lot of it came through the awareness that he brought to the UFC community. And so just organically, UFC showed up. The reason why UFC made a lot of sense for us, though, is, and they kind of planted this seed in my head, was when we looked at, let's say, other professional sports, they're training at a high level all the time. UFC, though, has to be optimized for 25 minutes, maybe once or twice a year.
Yeah.
And when you still watch them, they're exhausted, right? Like they're at round 3 and you're like, who is going to survive to round 5 just based on the exertion, right? And that was a really interesting thought for me, was just the difference in training between, let's say, an NFL player and UFC. Both are extreme, don't get me wrong, but like to think about optimization for 25 minutes once or twice a year is pretty incredible. Mm-hmm. And so then you look at, let's say, brain trauma, and you look at some of these other things that they're doing. It made a lot of sense. And so we put together a really, fun deal, cool deal. We'll work with our Performance Institute to do some of these demonstrations that we can do with the brain and the heart, working with their fighters. They have always been somewhat of a disruptive organization, which I think kind of mirrors kind of our ethos as well, which is like, let's just keep pushing forward. Whatever obstacles kind of get in our way, let's just use that as more fuel to keep moving forward. And they've really, if you go back in time, they have an amazing trajectory that has been filled with obstacles, and they've continued to grow and grow and grow. Their global footprint also, we ship product in nearly 90 countries every single month, and their global footprint compared to other, kind of professional platforms like that made a lot of sense for us as well.
Good. So if I'm at home right now and I wanted to get started, like where do I start? Number one of these.
Yeah.
On every cell phone.
Yeah. I always start with like educate yourself a little bit first, because again, I'm very conscious of my ability to market and sell. And this in the space that you're into, and I actually listened to quite a few of your podcasts in kind of preparation for this. You say a few things that that really resonate with me, which was, in your world, there's this group of people that continue to want to be fed the content that you're creating and not do anything about it. Mm. Like they keep coming to you for information, yet they have all the answers, right?
Yeah.
And you've got to somehow cultivate the knowledge and then the trust in that knowledge that they have to then make decisions for themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, I start there. Like, please go do your own work. Don't listen to me. Like, I'm a marketer, I'm a salesperson. Don't listen to me. Go do your own work. We provide a ton of resources on our site to go do your own research, do your own work. We help you understand how to read a good science paper. What's the difference between peer-reviewed? What's the difference between published research? And now when you go look at the field of other products that are out there, there's nothing else out there that has been peer-reviewed, published. It doesn't exist, not in our space. And we have dozens of research papers. Our team was asked to present at this crazy congress, this information technology congress in London, how we actually modulate frequencies and all the math and science behind that was then peer reviewed and published. Like, we're doing really cool work in that space. And then we then apply it in these different ways. It's really cool, but go do your own research, right? Like, I can tell you all the cool stories. I can tell you how it started. But at the end of the day, you have to become your own teacher, your own advocate, and you have to learn how to do that. And so I would start there. Now, if you want to do something about it, yes, get one of those for each of your phones, all your devices, specifically for children or people trying to conceive. Like, fertility is a real problem.
Mm-hmm.
And you want to talk about an easy way to measure if EMF is harmful. Measure your testosterone, measure your sperm health. People that are quote unquote, infertile or experiencing fertility issues, they're getting tested constantly, right? And so test it yourself. Take the stuff out of your pocket. Use the product. You will see a boost in testosterone. You'll see a boost in sperm quality. And I'm saying that because I know the negative effects of published research on those things with the cell phone being in the public. And that's where Andrew Huberman talks a lot about this, is specifically on men and women and the reproductive organs. And the reason why he says is because cells that have a high rate of turnover or change, they're more susceptible because it's open DNA. It's always open DNA, which then is why we have so much concern around young people, children, babies, developing organisms. They have open DNA. And I had done this appearance on the Dr. Drew show, and in the work that he had done coming in and preparing for that, he learned a lot about this idea of open DNA and how EMF disrupts that, because it's open. And so it's developing. And so when you introduce this interference, then its ability to do what it's supposed to do is then harmed and potentially disrupted. So I would start with taking care of your kids. Obviously take care of yourself as well, but I would start with the simple things. They're relatively inexpensive. They last a long time. They'll last forever if you don't lose them or break them. And they're actually pretty hard to break. But I would do that. And I would say if you really want to optimize, I would start to look at these bigger ones. I would travel with these. We have, if you are someone that works out a lot, and let's say you ride your bike and you're doing all your biometrics and stuff like that, you're doing your Stravas and you got your heart rate, clip one on there as well. And you'll see like these improvements in energy output. And we see it over and over again, right? The amount of wattage your body produces goes up. And so there's some really cool things you can do on your own, but I would start with take care of your kids, get that for all your electronic devices, all your wireless devices. Smart meters on your home is one that you again, if you want to do your own research, that is one that to be alarmed by, because it's unnecessarily a large amount of radiation, because it's constantly sending a signal all the time to these, whatever it's communicating with, right? And you had no choice, and your home is now built with a smart meter. So take care of that, because that's just a hot spot in your home that you don't even know about. Your router, things like that. So yeah, I would start basic and take care of the devices, because they're always on you. The chronic exposure, you're always there. That's what we're really worried about, is the chronic exposure. And then I would start to build out from there.
Beautiful. And what's the site?
Airestech.com. So AIRESTECH.com.
And can we give them like a discount?
Yeah, I don't remember what the code is, but we'll have that show notes or whatever.
I think it's Danny25.
Danny25.
And 25% off is...
It's a good deal. That's a good deal. That's nice. You'll find some discounts floating around there, but rarely are they that aggressive. So we want to make sure that we took care of your audience.
I appreciate it.
Yeah.
I appreciate it. Thanks so much. How do people learn more about Airestech besides the website? Is there an IG page?
Yeah, I think that's just Airestech as well.
Okay.
And we have a blog called The Way Forward and a podcast where we've brought on some really great guests that are kind of at the forefront of EMF, the different programs, scientists. I mentioned Environmental Health Trust, which is the the group that does a lot of the pushing the laws forward. So we had some really great guests on that, talking about what's going on. So it's a great place again to kind of educate yourself.
Beautiful, beautiful. I want to end this one by saying, kind of like what you couldn't say. It's, look, part of connecting to your higher self is to connect to your intuition. And if you look at all of these devices, if you look at all the devices in your home, you've got to understand that, our ancestors did not have any of these things. Our human body was not created or made to be in constant communication with any of these things. And so I would argue to say that this is part of your duty in living in today's world, is you need to protect yourself and protect your family. Don't take my word for it. Close your eyes and really think about it, and really feel what your iPhone feels like in your hands. Feel that chill. Feel what your watch feels like. Feel what the headsets feel like. And if you pay attention, you're going to feel a thing or two. And that's when you'll realize, oh my God, I may not be able to see it, but there's a frequency going on in there, and that could be causing me some damage. And so I would say go to airestech.com right away and get your family protected. And that's it for this week's episode. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. And we'll see you on next week's episode.